October 14, 2019. The rain had been falling over the isolated town of Blackridge for nearly 3 days without pause. Thick clouds swallowed the mountains surrounding the valley, and the narrow roads leading into town had become almost impossible to travel. It was the kind of place that disappeared from the world whenever the weather turned bad. To outsiders, Blackridge looked peaceful. To the people who lived there, it was a place filled with stories no one wanted to repeat after sunset. Most of those stories were dismissed as local legends: ghost lights wandering through the forest, whispers heard beneath the old bridge, strange figures seen standing at the edge of the lake before vanishing into the fog. But there was one story everyone agreed was real. No one talked about it. Not because they had forgotten, but because they were terrified of remembering. Journalist Ethan Carter had spent nearly 10 years investigating unexplained disappearances across the country. He wasn't interested in ghosts. He didn't believe in monsters. Every mystery, he believed, had a human explanation waiting to be uncovered. His career had been built on exposing myths, proving that strange events usually came down to greed, fear, or coincidence. So when an anonymous envelope arrived at his apartment one rainy evening, he almost threw it away without opening it. There was no return address, no stamp, just his full name written in dark blue ink. Inside was a single photograph. It showed 6 people standing in front of an abandoned stone church surrounded by dense pine trees. The image looked old. Very old. The corners were burned. The colors had faded into shades of gray. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual. Until Ethan looked closer. 5 people were facing the camera. The 6th wasn't. Instead, the final figure stood with their back turned. Completely motionless. Wearing a long black coat. Across the bottom of the photograph, someone had written 3 words in shaky handwriting. He came back. No signature. No explanation. Folded behind the photograph was another piece of paper. This one contained only a set of coordinates. And a date. October 18, 2019. Exactly 4 days away. Ethan searched every online map he could find. The coordinates pointed to a forest nearly 200 miles north. Near Blackridge. Curious, he searched the town's history. Almost nothing appeared. A population of fewer than 800 people. 1 elementary school. 1 church. 1 sheriff's office. No famous landmarks. No major crimes. Nothing unusual. It was as if the town barely existed. Then Ethan found something odd. An archived newspaper from 1974 mentioned a camping group that disappeared in the surrounding forest. The article was strangely short. Only 3 paragraphs. No names. No investigation details. Just one sentence that stood out. Authorities closed the case after concluding there was insufficient evidence to determine what occurred. That was it. No follow-up articles. No memorial. No interviews. It was as though someone had erased the story from history. For Ethan, that was enough. He packed his recording equipment, cameras, notebooks, and drove toward Blackridge the next morning. The road into town twisted through endless forests. Cell service disappeared nearly 40 miles before the town limits. The GPS froze several times. Static interrupted every radio station. Even the weather forecast vanished. Only silence remained. As dusk settled over the mountains, Ethan passed a rusted sign. Welcome to Blackridge. Population, 742. Someone had scratched deep lines across the word welcome. The sign leaned sideways as if it had been struck years earlier and never repaired. The town itself looked frozen in time. Old brick buildings. A gas station with faded pumps. A diner whose neon sign flickered every few seconds. People moved slowly along the sidewalks, but something felt wrong. Nobody smiled. Nobody waved. As Ethan parked outside the diner, conversations inside abruptly stopped. Every customer turned toward the window, watching him. Not with curiosity, with concern. He stepped inside. The silence followed him. An elderly waitress approached. "You aren't from here." It wasn't a question. "No. I'm Ethan Carter. I'm investigating. You should leave." He blinked. "I just arrived." "I know." She placed a cup of coffee in front of him without asking. "You'll leave tomorrow." "I don't think I will." She stared at him for several seconds, then quietly asked, "Did someone send you the picture?" Ethan froze. "You know about it." Her face lost all color. Without another word, she walked into the kitchen. She never came back. Another waitress served the rest of the customers. No one acknowledged Ethan again. Later that evening, he checked into Blackridge Inn. The owner, Martha Holloway, handed him an old brass key. Room 7. As she filled out the register, Ethan noticed something framed behind the counter. It was the exact same photograph he had received. Only this version wasn't damaged. All 6 figures were clearly visible. And this time, every one of them faced the camera. Everyone except one. The man in the black coat still stood with his back turned. Ethan pointed toward it. "Where was that taken?" Martha looked up. Her hand stopped moving. "You've seen it before. I received a copy." She slowly removed the photograph from the wall. Turned it face down. "You didn't." "I did." "No." Her voice became almost a whisper. "You received a warning." Unable to sleep, Ethan spent hours reviewing his notes. At exactly 2:17 a.m., the power inside the hotel suddenly failed. Darkness swallowed the room. Seconds later, 3 slow knocks echoed from his door. Knock. 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 He grabbed his flashlight. "Who's there?" No answer. Another 3 knocks. This time louder. He unlocked the door. The hallway was empty. Completely silent. No footsteps. No voices. Nothing. Then he noticed something on the floor. Another envelope. No stamp. No name. Inside was a handwritten message. "You still have time to leave." Beneath the sentence was another line. "The church remembers everyone." Before Ethan could process the words, a loud crash echoed from downstairs. He rushed toward the staircase. The lobby was empty. The front door stood wide open. Rain poured inside. The photograph Martha had hidden behind the desk now lay on the floor. Its glass frame shattered. But that wasn't what made Ethan stop breathing. The man in the black coat was gone. The photograph now showed only 5 people standing outside the abandoned church. The 6th figure had completely disappeared. Not blurred. Not damaged. Gone. As if he had never been there at all. Behind Ethan, the old grandfather clock struck 3. 1, 2, 3. A deep voice whispered from somewhere inside the darkness. "You weren't supposed to see him." Ethan spun around. No one was there. Only the sound of slow footsteps. Walking somewhere above him. On the 2nd floor. In a hotel where every guest had already checked out. End of part 1. Ethan stood frozen in the hotel lobby. The whisper still echoed in his ears. "You weren't supposed to see him." The sound had come from somewhere behind him, close enough that he had felt warm breath against the back of his neck. Yet the lobby was empty. Rain lashed against the windows, and the old grandfather clock continued ticking as though nothing had happened. Then, the footsteps upstairs stopped. Complete silence filled the building. Ethan gripped his flashlight tighter and slowly climbed the staircase. Every wooden step groaned beneath his weight. The second-floor hallway stretched into darkness, lined with old wooden doors. Room 8. Room 9. Room 10. Every door stood slightly open. He pushed the first one. Empty. Dust covered the furniture. The bed looked untouched for years. The next room was the same. So was the third. It was impossible. Martha had told him earlier that several guests were staying overnight. Now every room appeared abandoned. No luggage. No clothes. No signs that anyone had ever been there. Only silence. As Ethan turned to leave, his flashlight reflected off something lying at the end of the hallway. A tape recorder. Old. Covered in dust. A single cassette remained inside. He pressed play. Static crackled for several seconds. Then a frightened man's voice emerged. "If anyone finds this, don't trust the photographs." Heavy breathing followed. "They change." Static. "We counted 6 people yesterday." Another pause. "This morning there were only 5. More static. No one remembers the 6th. A loud scream suddenly erupted from the speaker. The tape ended. Ethan looked around the hallway. Goosebumps spread across his arms. Someone had recorded that message decades ago. Yet it described exactly what had happened only minutes earlier. Morning arrived beneath thick grey clouds. Ethan walked downstairs expecting to question Martha. The front desk was empty. The hotel looked abandoned. Cobwebs covered the corners of the lobby. Dust coated every table. Even the coffee pot had rusted. He blinked. Hadn't he checked in only hours ago? Confused, he stepped outside. The town looked normal again. People walked along the sidewalks. Cars passed through the streets. It was as though the strange night had never happened. The hotel sign still read, Blackridge Inn. But when Ethan asked a passing man where Martha had gone, the stranger frowned. Martha? Martha Holloway. The man looked confused. No one by that name has owned this place. What are you talking about? I spoke with her last night. The stranger slowly shook his head. The owner died 23 years ago. Ethan laughed nervously. That's impossible. It isn't. The man pointed toward the cemetery on the hill. She's buried there. By noon, Ethan stood before a weathered gravestone. Martha Holloway. 1948 to 1996. Beloved mother. Beloved friend. Gone but never forgotten. Ethan stared at the date. He had spoken with her less than 12 hours earlier. His heartbeat quickened. Had someone impersonated her? Or had he imagined everything? A voice interrupted his thoughts. You're asking the wrong questions. An elderly man stood nearby, leaning on a cane. His white beard reached nearly to his chest. Deep scars covered one side of his face. My name is Samuel. You knew Martha? Samuel nodded. Everyone did. I met her yesterday. No. Samuel's expression darkened. You met someone who wanted you to believe she was Martha. They walked together to an abandoned fishing dock overlooking Blackridge Lake. Fog drifted across the water. Samuel spoke quietly. You aren't the first investigator to come here. How many? I stopped counting. What happened to them? Samuel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached inside his coat and removed a faded newspaper clipping. The headline read, Investigative reporter vanishes during Blackridge visit. The photograph beneath the headline showed a smiling woman holding a camera. Diane Brooks, Samuel said. She disappeared in 1989. He handed Ethan another clipping. Another journalist. Missing. Another. Missing. Then another. Every 10 or 15 years. Someone arrived. Someone investigated. No one returned. Why? Samuel looked toward the forest. Because they all went to the church. The church? Samuel nodded slowly. It doesn't exist on any modern map. But people still find it. How? It decides. Ethan frowned. What does that mean? It lets certain people see it. The old man's voice became quieter. My brother was one of them. What happened? Samuel closed his eyes. He disappeared in 1974. The same year as the missing camping group. Ethan immediately recognized the connection. Were they together? Samuel nodded. There were 6 of them. 6. The same number in the photograph. My brother mailed me one letter before he vanished. Samuel carefully unfolded a worn piece of paper. The handwriting was shaky. If I don't return, don't let anyone count us. Ethan read the sentence twice. I don't understand. Neither did I. Samuel sighed. Until I started forgetting. Forgetting what? My brother's face. That evening Samuel led Ethan deep into Blackridge Forest. Towering pine trees blocked the fading sunlight. The deeper they walked, the quieter the forest became. No birds. No insects. Not even the wind. Only the crunch of leaves beneath their boots. After nearly 2 hours, Samuel suddenly stopped. We are here. Ethan looked around. Nothing. Just trees. There isn't anything. Samuel pointed ahead. Keep walking. Ethan took another 10 steps. Then, the trees opened. His breath caught. Hidden within the forest stood an enormous stone church. Its walls were cracked. Its stained glass windows were shattered. Thick vines climbed across the bell tower. The building looked centuries old. Yet no path led to it. No footprints surrounded it. Almost as if it had appeared only moments before. This is impossible, Ethan whispered. Samuel didn't answer. He was staring at the church doors. They're open. Weren't they before? Samuel slowly shook his head. They've been closed for 40 years. The heavy wooden doors creaked as Ethan pushed them inward. Dust filled the air. Moonlight streamed through broken windows. Rows of wooden pews stretched toward a stone altar. Everything inside looked abandoned. Except fresh footprints. Someone had entered recently. Ethan followed them. They ended at the altar. On top rested a leather-bound journal. Perfectly clean. Untouched by dust. Its first page contained a date. October 18, 1974. Exactly 45 years earlier. The journal belonged to someone named Thomas Hale. One of the missing campers. Ethan turned the pages. The entries began normally. Descriptions of hiking. Camping. Photography. Then the writing changed. There are 6 of us. Next entry. Something strange happened today. None of us can remember when David joined the group. Another page. The photographs keep changing. Another. Mark says there are only 5 of us. He's wrong. There are 6. Another page. Now I only remember 5. The handwriting became frantic. Words overlapped each other. If you read this, don't trust your memory. It changes you. The remaining pages had been torn out. Every single one. A loud metallic clang echoed through the church. The enormous bell above them rang once. Boom. Samuel looked terrified. We have to leave. Why? It knows we're here. Another bell. Boom. The entire building trembled. Dust rained from the ceiling. Then, footsteps. Slow. Measured. Echoing somewhere beneath the floor. Not above. Below. As though someone was walking through tunnels underneath the church. Ethan aimed his flashlight toward the altar. A narrow stone staircase had appeared behind it. I'm going down. Samuel grabbed his arm. No. We finally found something. No one comes back from below. Another sound echoed upward. This time, someone was humming. A calm, almost familiar melody. Then a man's voice drifted through the darkness. Ethan. He froze. Samuel stared at him. Who was that? Ethan's face turned pale. I know that voice. It can't be. Samuel whispered. Who? Ethan swallowed hard. My father. Samuel's grip loosened. But? Your father died 12 years ago. The humming stopped. Silence returned. Then the voice came again. Soft. Patient. Waiting. Come downstairs. I've been waiting for you. The voice echoed through the darkness beneath the church. Come downstairs. Ethan's body refused to move. It was impossible. He knew that voice better than anyone. His father, Michael Carter, had died in a house fire 12 years earlier. Ethan had identified the body himself. He had attended the funeral. He had carried the coffin with his own hands. Yet there was no mistaking it. Every word, every pause, every breath. It was his father. Samuel grabbed Ethan's shoulder. Don't answer. But that's... I know who you think it is. You heard it? Samuel nodded. I heard someone too. Ethan looked at him. Who? Samuel's face turned pale. My brother. For several long seconds, neither man spoke. The church had become unnaturally quiet. Even the rain outside had stopped. Then the voice returned. This time, closer. Ethan, hurry. Ignoring Samuel's warning, Ethan switched on his camera. The small red recording light blinked to life. If something happens, he whispered, this camera becomes the evidence. Samuel sighed heavily. There won't be anyone left to watch it. Together, they stepped toward the hidden staircase. Each stone step descended deeper beneath the church. The air grew colder. The walls became damp. After nearly 50 steps, the staircase opened into a vast underground chamber. Ethan stopped in disbelief. The room was enormous. Much larger than the church above. Stone pillars stretched into darkness, supporting a ceiling that seemed impossibly high. Hundreds of candles burned along the walls. None had melted. None flickered. As if time itself had frozen around them. At the center of the chamber stood a single wooden table. On it rested dozens of photographs. Thousands, perhaps. Some looked brand new. Others had yellowed with age. Ethan picked one up. It showed a smiling family standing outside a farmhouse. He turned it over. Written on the back was a date. May 12, 1968. Another photograph. A police officer beside his patrol car. August 3, 1984. Another. A young woman holding a newborn baby. January 19, 2007. There were hundreds of lives captured here. People from different decades, different countries, different generations. None appeared connected. Yet every photograph had one strange detail. In the background, there was always the same man, standing far away, wearing a long black coat, his face hidden. Samuel slowly backed away. This place shouldn't exist. Ethan barely heard him. His attention had shifted to an enormous wall covered from floor to ceiling with framed photographs. Rows upon rows. Perfectly organized. Thousands of faces stared back at him. Children. Teachers. Doctors. Soldiers. Tourists. Old men. Young women. Each photograph had something written beneath it. A name. A date. And a single word. Remembered. But scattered among them were empty frames. No photographs. Only blank white paper. Each labeled differently. Erased. Ethan's pulse quickened. How many people have disappeared? Samuel whispered. Maybe they never disappeared. What do you mean? Maybe they were forgotten. A sudden click echoed behind them. Ethan spun around. His camera had switched itself off. The battery indicator now read 0. Impossible. He had charged it fully before entering the church. His flashlight began flickering. One by one, the candles dimmed. The room grew darker. Then a soft laugh echoed through the chamber. Not loud. Not threatening. Just patient. As though someone had been waiting a very long time. A figure slowly emerged from the shadows. Tall. Thin. Dressed entirely in black. His face remained hidden beneath the brim of an old hat. Samuel gasped. No. The stranger stopped several feet away. Neither hostile nor welcoming. He simply stood there, watching them. Ethan raised his voice. Who are you? Silence. What do you want? Still nothing. Finally, the stranger spoke. You came because someone remembered. His voice was calm. Almost gentle. Who are you? Ethan repeated. The man tilted his head slightly. That question has no answer anymore. Without warning, every photograph on the walls began falling to the floor. Glass shattered. Frames splintered. Thousands of images scattered across the stone floor. But something far stranger happened. As each photograph broke, Ethan felt a sharp pain in his head. Suddenly, faces vanished from his memory. His fifth-grade teacher. Gone. The cashier he had spoken to yesterday. Gone. A college friend. Gone. He could remember that someone had existed, but not who they were. He stumbled backward. What's happening? The man in black replied softly. Memory has weight. When it breaks, so do people. Samuel screamed. Ethan turned just in time to see him staring at a photograph lying near his feet. It showed 6 young campers standing beside a lake. One of them smiled directly at the camera. Samuel fell to his knees. That's him. My brother. Tears streamed down his face. For 40 years. I couldn't remember his face. He reached toward the photograph. The instant his fingers touched it, the image faded. His brother disappeared from the picture, leaving only 5 campers behind. Samuel froze. No. No. His breathing became frantic. What was his name? He looked desperately at Ethan. What was my brother's name? Ethan opened his mouth. Nothing came out. He couldn't remember either. Within seconds, it was as though Samuel's brother had never existed. The stranger watched silently. You see, no one truly dies. They simply become unremembered. Ethan felt anger replacing fear. You're doing this. The man shook his head. No. I only keep the balance. What balance? If every forgotten person remained, the world would collapse beneath the weight of memory. That makes no sense. It doesn't have to. The candles suddenly extinguished. Complete darkness. A deep rumble shook the chamber. Stone dust rained from the ceiling. When Ethan switched his flashlight back on, the stranger had vanished. Only one object remained where he had stood. An old pocket watch. Its hands were moving backward. Samuel picked it up carefully. Inside the cover was an inscription. Time remembers what people forget. Beneath the words, a small family photograph. Ethan stared at it. His blood ran cold. The picture showed his parents. His mother smiled beside his father. And between them stood a little boy, around 7 years old. The child was holding his father's hand. Ethan frowned. I don't have a brother. Samuel looked closer. Yes. You do. No. I was an only child. Samuel slowly pointed at the photograph. There are 2 boys. Ethan's breathing stopped. He looked again. Samuel was right. There were 2 children. One was Ethan. The other, a boy nearly identical to him. Same eyes. Same hair. Same smile. Ethan searched his memory. Nothing. No birthdays. No games. No shared bedroom. No memories at all. Just emptiness. What's his name? Samuel asked. Ethan tried to answer. His head throbbed violently. I don't know. The words refused to come. It felt as though someone had ripped an entire lifetime from his mind. Behind them, the mysterious man spoke once more. His voice echoed from every direction. You're beginning to remember. And that is the most dangerous thing you could have done. The chamber trembled violently. Cracks spread across the walls. Hundreds of photographs burst into flames without warning. The staircase leading back to the church collapsed in a deafening roar. Chunks of stone crashed to the floor. Dust filled the air. Their only escape was gone. Then, through the thick smoke, dozens of voices began whispering at once. Not 1. Not 10. Hundreds. All repeating the same sentence. Find the 7th. Ethan's heart pounded. The 7th. Samuel looked around in horror. There were only 6. The whispers grew louder. Find the 7th. Find the 7th. Before he remembers you. The whispers grew louder until they no longer sounded like voices. They sounded like breathing. Hundreds of unseen people inhaling and exhaling in perfect rhythm beneath the ancient church. Find the 7th. Before he remembers you. Ethan covered his ears, but it made no difference. The voices weren't echoing through the chamber anymore. They were inside his head. Samuel staggered backward, clutching the pocket watch so tightly that blood trickled from his palm. We have to get out. There isn't a way out anymore, Ethan replied, staring at the collapsed staircase. The ceiling continued to crack. Stone fragments crashed onto the floor. For a moment, Ethan believed they were trapped. Then something unusual caught his attention. One of the walls was moving. Not collapsing. Moving. Slowly. Almost silently. The ancient stone slid apart, revealing a narrow corridor that hadn't existed moments earlier. Neither man touched the wall. It had opened by itself. Samuel whispered, "The church is choosing." The corridor stretched far into darkness. Unlike the chamber, its walls were perfectly smooth, almost polished. There was no dust. No cobwebs. No signs of age. It looked strangely new. Ethan shined his flashlight ahead. Portraits lined both sides of the hallway. Hundreds of them. Every portrait showed the same scene. 7 people standing together. Not 6. 7. But the 7th person's face had been scratched away in every single painting. Deliberately. Violently. As though someone had spent years trying to erase that one individual. Samuel counted quietly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He stopped. There should be 7. There are. No. Samuel stepped closer. I can only see 6. Ethan looked again. His heart skipped. Only seconds earlier, he had counted 7 figures. Now, there were only 6. The 7th silhouette remained. But it was empty. A human-shaped space with no one inside it. As though reality itself had removed the person standing there. Further down the corridor, they discovered a heavy iron door. Carved into its surface was a single sentence. Memory is the only prison that locks itself. The door stood slightly open. Inside waited a circular room. 7 wooden chairs surrounded an old stone table. Each chair bore a brass nameplate. Ethan brushed away decades of dust. Chair 1. Thomas Hale. The missing camper whose journal they had found. Chair 2. Diane Brooks. The journalist who disappeared in 1989. Chair 3. Another investigator. Chair 4. Another. Chair 5. Another. Chair 6. The brass plate was blank. As though the name had faded away. Then Ethan looked toward the final chair. Chair 7. No name. Instead, a fresh sheet of paper. As if someone had placed it there only minutes earlier. Across the paper, written in dark black ink, were 2 words. Ethan Carter. His blood ran cold. Samuel stared at him. No. This can't be. Ethan slowly backed away from the chair. I've never been here. You weren't supposed to. The familiar voice echoed once again. The man in black stepped from the shadows behind them. This time, his face remained hidden. But his posture had changed. He no longer looked threatening. He looked tired. As though carrying an impossible burden. You've been expected for a very long time. Ethan pointed angrily. Who are you? The stranger remained silent. I asked you a question. Finally, the man answered. I've had many names. I've forgotten most of them. Ethan's patience snapped. What is this place? What happened to the missing people? What do you want from me? The stranger looked toward the empty 7th chair. You believe people disappear. They don't. They become unreachable. From where? From memory. He stepped toward the table. Every generation, someone begins remembering things humanity was never meant to remember. And when that happens, the archive awakens. The archive. The man nodded. This church is only the entrance. Without warning, the stone floor trembled. The walls dissolved into darkness. The room around them disappeared. Ethan blinked. Suddenly, he wasn't inside the church anymore. He stood in the middle of a busy city street. Cars raced past. People hurried along sidewalks. Bright advertisements covered towering buildings. Everything looked normal. Except, no one noticed him. A woman walked straight through him. A child ran past without looking. An elderly man brushed against Ethan's shoulder without reacting. It was as though Ethan wasn't there. Samuel had vanished. The stranger had vanished. Only the city remained. A familiar voice called his name. Ethan. He turned. Standing across the street was his mother. Exactly as she had looked 15 years earlier. Healthy. Smiling. Alive. She waved happily. Hurry. We're going to be late. Tears filled Ethan's eyes. His mother had died of cancer when he was 23. He tried running toward her. But every traffic light turned red. Cars blocked his path. People crowded between them. Each second, she grew farther away. Ethan. She smiled again. Then suddenly frowned. Her eyes filled with confusion. It's happening again. What? She looked directly at him. They're taking him. Who? Your brother. The city vanished. Ethan found himself back inside the circular room. Breathing heavily. His heart pounded. Samuel rushed toward him. What happened? I saw my mother. Samuel's face changed instantly. So did I. You did. My brother. We weren't seeing memories. We were seeing. Samuel stopped speaking. The realization terrified him. We were seeing lives that were erased. The stranger finally removed his gloves. His hands were covered in strange black markings. Symbols. Hundreds of them. Some appeared burned into his skin. Others looked as though they were still moving beneath the surface. You've started seeing beyond memory. What does that mean? Ethan demanded. It means the archive has accepted you. I don't want it. No one ever does. He reached into his coat and removed an ancient leather book. Unlike every other object in the church, this one looked untouched by time. Its pages were perfectly white. No dust. No damage. The cover bore no title. Only a strange circular symbol. The stranger carefully opened it. Every page contained names. Thousands of names. Beside each one appeared a date. Some dates stretched back centuries. Others belonged to people who had disappeared only recently. Then Ethan noticed something impossible. Near the final page, his own name had already been written. Ethan Carter. Below it, another name. One he had never heard before. Elias Carter. Ethan frowned. Who is Elias? The stranger looked directly at him for the first time. Though his face remained hidden, Ethan somehow felt his eyes. Deep. Ancient. Filled with sadness. You've spent your entire life asking the wrong question. The question isn't, who is Elias? It's, why don't you remember him? Ethan grabbed the book. As his fingers touched the page, a violent flash exploded inside his mind. He saw two young boys playing beside a lake. One laughed. One fell into the water. Their father jumped in after them. Their mother screamed. The memory shifted. Birthday candles. Two identical cakes. Two little boys. Twins. Another flash. A family photograph. For smiling faces. Then, darkness. Someone carrying one child away through the forest. The boy was crying, calling Ethan's name. Ethan. Ethan. Don't let them forget me. Ethan collapsed onto the floor. His entire body trembled. Fragments of memories flooded back. Not complete. Not clear. But enough to leave him shaking. I had. He looked at Samuel. I had a twin brother. Samuel said nothing. He already knew. The stranger quietly closed the ancient book. The seventh has always existed. He was never lost. He was erased. Before Ethan could ask another question, the church bell rang above them. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then it continued. 4. 5. 6. The stranger's expression changed for the first time. Fear. Genuine fear. No. It can't be. Ethan stared at him. What is it? The stranger whispered. No bell has ever rung. 7 times. The final bell echoed through the underground halls. Boom. Every candle instantly went out. The ancient book burst open by itself. Its pages flipped wildly. Every written name began disappearing. One after another. As though an unseen hand was erasing humanity itself. Then, on the final blank page, a sentence slowly appeared in fresh black ink. The seventh remembers. The stranger took one step backward. For the first time in centuries. He looked terrified. The final bell echoed through the underground halls long after it had stopped ringing. No one spoke. The ancient book lay open on the stone table, its pages turning on their own as if an invisible wind were racing through them. Every name continued disappearing. Thousands of them. Entire lifetimes erased in silence. The stranger reached for the book, but the moment his fingers touched the cover, he cried out in pain. Dark symbols spread rapidly across his hands, glowing beneath his skin. He stumbled backward. It's begun. Ethan looked at him. What has? The stranger slowly raised his head. The archive is dying. The room shook violently. Large cracks spread across the ceiling. For the first time since entering the church, Ethan realized something impossible. The underground chamber wasn't simply collapsing. It was changing. The stone walls dissolved into darkness. The floor beneath them rippled like the surface of a lake. The air became strangely heavy. Samuel whispered, "This place isn't underground." Ethan looked around. No. It never was. The stranger took a slow breath. For centuries, the archive has existed outside time. It preserves every memory humanity cannot carry. Ethan frowned. You keep saying the archive. What exactly is it? The stranger looked around the endless darkness. It is the place where forgotten lives continue to exist. Every person erased from history. Every name no one remembers. Every face removed from every photograph. They come here. Samuel's voice trembled. So they're alive. The stranger closed his eyes. Not alive. Not dead. Remembered. Ethan thought of the photographs. The missing investigators. His mother. His father. His brother. One question echoed louder than all the others. Who erased them? The stranger remained silent. Then he answered with another question. Have you ever wondered why civilizations disappear? Ethan stared. Empires vanish. Languages die. Entire cultures are forgotten. People believe time destroys history. It doesn't. Memory does. The chamber suddenly filled with light. Thousands of glowing threads appeared in the darkness. Each thread stretched into infinity. Some glowed brightly. Others flickered weakly. Many snapped before Ethan's eyes. Every time one broke, a distant whisper faded forever. "What are those?" The stranger replied quietly. "Every living person's memory." Ethan watched another thread disappear. Somewhere, someone had just been forgotten. Without warning, one thread began glowing brighter than all the others. Golden. Almost blinding. It stretched farther than the eye could see. The stranger's face changed instantly. "No. It belongs to him." "Who?" "The seventh." The golden thread suddenly split into two. One half connected to Ethan. The other disappeared deep into the darkness. Far beyond the archive. Far beyond reality itself. Ethan's heart raced. "My brother." The stranger nodded. "Elias. He's alive." "No." "Then dead." "No." "Then where is he?" The stranger whispered. "Exactly where you've always believed he wasn't." The chamber disappeared. Once again, Ethan found himself standing somewhere else. This time, it was his childhood home. Everything looked exactly as he remembered. The wallpaper. The staircase. The old grandfather clock. Even the smell of fresh coffee drifted from the kitchen. His mother smiled while preparing breakfast. His father sat reading the newspaper. And two little boys ran down the stairs. One was Ethan. The other, Elias. His twin brother. The memory unfolded naturally. No fear. No mystery. Just an ordinary morning. Until someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Knock. 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 Exactly the same pattern Ethan had heard in the hotel. His father opened the door. The man in the black coat stood outside. Younger. Silent. His face hidden beneath the same old hat. He held a single photograph. 1 family. 4 people. 2 boys. The stranger spoke only 1 sentence. "You have 7 days." The vision changed. Ethan watched his parents arguing late that night. His mother was crying. His father looked terrified. "They found us. We have to leave." His mother shook her head. "We can't keep running forever." His father looked toward the boys sleeping upstairs. "If they remember, they'll come." Another flash. Rain. The family driving through a mountain road. Blackridge. The church. His parents entering the building carrying both boys. Someone was waiting inside. Not the stranger. Someone else. Someone whose face remained hidden by darkness itself. No matter how hard Ethan looked, he couldn't see the figure. Only hear its voice. There can only be one. The vision shattered. Ethan collapsed back into the archive. His breathing became frantic. What does that mean? There can only be one. The stranger looked away. "I hoped you would never remember." Samuel suddenly interrupted. "Wait." He stared at Ethan. "You said you had a twin." Ethan nodded slowly. Samuel frowned. "Then why? Why does every photograph show 6 people?" Ethan froze. Samuel continued. "If there were originally 7, who erased the first one?" Silence. Even the glowing thread stopped moving. The stranger whispered. "Not who. What?" The ancient book suddenly slammed shut. Its cover cracked down the center. A deafening roar shook the archive. The endless darkness began peeling away like smoke. Behind it, something enormous moved. Ethan couldn't understand what he was seeing. It wasn't human. It wasn't an animal. It had no clear shape. Only countless eyes opening one after another inside the darkness. Watching. Waiting. Remembering. Samuel fell to his knees. "What is that?" The stranger answered quietly. "The first witness. It existed before history. Before language. Before memory itself. It remembers everything." Ethan felt an overwhelming pressure inside his mind. Countless images flooded his thoughts. Ancient civilizations. Stone temples. Unknown stars. Faces from thousands of years ago. All at once. He screamed. It was too much. No human mind could survive remembering everything. The stranger suddenly stood between Ethan and the endless darkness. "You cannot look at it." "Why?" "Because memory has limits. The first witness doesn't." A deep voice echoed through the archive. Not loud. Not angry. Simply impossible to ignore. It spoke every language at once. Every whisper became one sentence. "Return what was taken." The stranger slowly lowered his head. "I can't." The voice came again. "Then the balance ends." The ground split open. The glowing thread snapped by the thousands. Every photograph in the archive burst into flames. The ancient book dissolved into ash. Samuel grabbed Ethan. "We have to go." "There isn't anywhere to go." "There has to be." Suddenly, the pocket watch Samuel still carried began spinning wildly backward. Faster. Faster. Until time itself seemed to stop. Everything froze. The falling ash. The collapsing ceiling. Even the flames hung motionless in the air. Only 3 people could still move. Ethan. Samuel. The stranger. The stranger slowly removed his hat. For the first time, Ethan saw his face. He gasped. It wasn't a monster. It wasn't a ghost. It wasn't an ancient guardian. It was an older version of Ethan himself. His hair streaked with gray. His face covered in scars. His eyes exhausted after what looked like centuries of loneliness. Samuel whispered, "No." Ethan stepped backward. "That's impossible." The older man smiled sadly. "I said I had forgotten my name. I never said I wasn't you." The silence that followed felt endless. Ethan struggled to breathe. "How?" The older Ethan looked toward the frozen darkness. "You'll understand. But first, you must remember why I chose to forget." Before Ethan could ask another question, a child's voice echoed through the frozen archive. Soft. Fragile. Heartbreaking. "Brother." Ethan turned toward the darkness. A small boy stepped forward. Around 7 years old. Identical to him. Holding the torn family photograph. Tears filled the boy's eyes. "Ethan. You finally came back." The little boy stood motionless beneath the endless darkness of the archive. He couldn't have been older than 7. His clothes were soaked as though he had just walked out of the rain. In his trembling hands, he held the torn family photograph Ethan had seen only moments before. His eyes met Ethan's. They were identical. The same blue-gray color. The same small scar above the left eyebrow. The same frightened expression Ethan remembered seeing in his own childhood photographs. Only one difference remained. The boy had never grown older. Elias? Ethan whispered. The child smiled sadly. I was beginning to think you'd never remember. Everything around them remained frozen. The falling ash. The burning photographs. The collapsing ceiling. Time itself refused to move. Only four beings remained untouched by the stillness. Ethan. Samuel. The boy. And the older version of Ethan standing quietly nearby. Samuel looked from one twin to the other, unable to speak. Nothing in his long life had prepared him for this. The older Ethan finally broke the silence. The archive doesn't imprison people. It imprisons choices. Ethan frowned. I don't understand. You will. He looked toward Elias. Tell him. The little boy took a slow breath. Do you remember the lake? Fragments flashed through Ethan's mind. Two boys laughing. A wooden dock. Their father teaching them how to skip stones across the water. Then, darkness. I remember pieces. You remember what they allowed you to keep. Elias looked toward the endless darkness surrounding the archive. It started before we were born. Grandfather was once the keeper. The man who guarded the archive. When he grew old, it needed someone to replace him. Ethan slowly turned toward the older version of himself. You? The older Ethan nodded. No. It wanted one of us. Samuel interrupted. The archive chooses children. The older Ethan shook his head. No. It chooses memory. When two identical minds exist, it can preserve twice as much. So it chose twins. Ethan's breathing became heavier. Our parents knew. They did. They spent years hiding us. The older Ethan nodded again. I came to warn them. You? Ethan stared. You visited our house. Yes. The day you saw me, I had already lived this life. I was trying to stop it. You failed. I always fail. Silence settled over the archive. For the first time, Ethan realized the terrible truth. The mysterious man in the black coat. The warning letters. The anonymous photographs. The visitor who appeared throughout history. Had never been a monster. He had always been Ethan. Older. Trapped in an endless cycle. Trying to save his family. Trying to change the past. Trying. And failing. Every single time. Ethan's voice shook. The fire. My father's death. My mother's illness. Were those real? The older Ethan closed his eyes. Yes. But not for the reasons you believed. Our parents destroyed every record of Elias. Every photograph. Every document. They hoped. If humanity forgot him, the archive would too. It didn't. Elias stepped forward. The archive never forgets. The first witness stirred in the darkness. Millions of eyes slowly opened. The endless voice echoed once again. The balance remains broken. The older Ethan answered calmly. I know. Return the forgotten. I can't. Then memory ends. The golden thread connecting Ethan and Elias began breaking apart. Piece by piece. The boy looked frightened. It has started. What has? Ethan asked. Elias smiled sadly. I've existed for too long. I wasn't supposed to. Samuel suddenly understood. The archive wasn't trying to erase Elias. It was trying to protect reality. The older Ethan nodded. One memory cannot exist in two lives forever. There can only be one. Ethan finally understood the sentence he had heard in his vision. There can only be one. Not one child. One memory. One life. One identity. Twins had divided something that should never have been divided. Elias handed Ethan the torn family photograph. Take it. What happens if I do? You'll remember everything. And you? The little boy smiled. I'll finally be allowed to leave. Tears filled Ethan's eyes. I just found you. You never lost me. You only forgot. His hands trembled as he accepted the photograph. The instant his fingers touched it, every forgotten memory returned. Thousands of them. Birthdays. School. Arguments. Laughter. Secrets only twins could understand. They had shared everything. Every fear. Every dream. Every promise. Until the night at the church. He remembered his parents begging the keeper for mercy. He remembered the choice. The archive demanded one child. His parents refused. So they offered something else. Memory. The keeper erased Elias from the minds of everyone who had ever known him. Friends. Neighbors. Teachers. Even Ethan himself. The world continued believing only one child had ever existed. Reality remained stable. The archive remained balanced. But Elias? Stayed trapped. Remembered only by the archive. Waiting. For someone to remember him again. The older Ethan spoke quietly. And then? You received my letter. You remembered. The balance broke. The first witness rose higher into the darkness. Its countless eyes focused upon Ethan. For the first time, he wasn't afraid. He stepped forward. If someone has to stay, it will be me. Samuel shouted. No. The older Ethan smiled. I already made that choice. You don't have to. The older Ethan walked toward the first witness. No. Ethan ran after him. But invisible force held him back. The older Ethan turned one final time. I've carried these memories for centuries. I'm tired. It's your turn to live. He removed the black coat. Placed it on the ground. Then looked at Elias. Take care of him. The darkness swallowed him. Not violently. Not painfully. Simply. Quietly. The first witness closed its countless eyes. The archive stopped shaking. The burning photographs went dark. The broken threads slowly repaired themselves. Time began moving once again. A warm breeze passed through the chamber. The stone walls faded. The church dissolved into sunlight. Ethan found himself standing alone outside the abandoned church. Morning had arrived. Birds sang through the forest. The storm was gone. Samuel stood beside him. Neither spoke for several minutes. Finally, Samuel asked, "Did we survive?" Ethan looked down. The torn family photograph remained in his hands. This time, it showed 4 people. His mother, his father, Ethan, and Elias. Both boys smiling. Both remembered. Weeks later, authorities searched the church. They found nothing. No underground chamber. No photographs. No journal. No signs anyone had ever been there. Officially, there had never been a mystery. Samuel disappeared shortly afterward. Some believed he had moved away. Others claimed he had never existed. Ethan never found out. Months passed. Ethan published a book describing everything that had happened. No publisher accepted it. Editors claimed the story made no sense. Some chapters simply disappeared from the manuscript. Others changed overnight. Eventually, he stopped trying. One rainy evening, nearly a year later, Ethan returned home after work. An envelope rested on his doorstep. No stamp. No return address. Inside, a single photograph. It showed 7 people standing outside the old stone church. For the first time, every face was visible. Thomas Hale, Diane Brooks, Samuel, Martha Holloway, the older Ethan, Elias, and the 7th figure, standing in the center, his face hidden beneath the shadow of a wide-brimmed hat. On the back of the photograph, written in familiar handwriting, were 6 words. Someone must always remember everyone else. Ethan smiled sadly. He looked toward the empty chair beside his desk. For just a second, he thought he heard his brother laughing. When he turned, no one was there. Only the photograph. And the black coat, folded neatly across the chair. Epilogue. To this day, no official record of Blackridge Church exists. No map has ever confirmed its location. No missing persons investigation mentions the archive. No historian has found evidence of Elias Carter. Yet every few years, somewhere in the world, an unexplained envelope appears on someone's doorstep. Inside is an old photograph. 7 people. One forgotten church. And a message that has never changed. Don't trust your memory. Because memories do not simply preserve the past. Sometimes, they decide who is allowed to have one.